Hello, everybody. It's good to be back again. We had to take a week off last week because I had a cold, and you might still be able to detect a little bit. I'm still a little bit stuffy, but I feel 100% better than I did last week. It was a whole week long of having a cold, but it wasn't COVID. It was just a cold, so that's
Good.
good. Yeah.
Yeah, really good.
And then my wife got it like the day after me, so we've both been sick around here. So,
Mhm.
how you doing, Mary?
I'm great. I haven't had a cold, thank goodness, and a lot of people around me are getting COVID, and I have yet to get COVID.
It's going around. You might think it's a pandemic or something. It's really wild.
You
Just
might
kidding.
think we're in the middle of
We
another wave. Yeah.
we are. It's a bad one. It seems like it's really easily caught, but apparently, I mean, it's a miserable thing to have, even if you've been um, vaccinated. But at least you don't die or go to the hospital. I mean, it's just a horrible,
Hopefully.
bad thing to go through. I still have not, as far as I know, have gotten it. So we got some people out there in the chat room. John, good to see you. And there are 5 other people out there. So if you want to say hello, we'll see who you are. And usually we have a nice little group. I hope that we didn't drive anybody off from not being here last week. But usually, we get anywhere from 12 to 20 people here, which is always so nice to see. So anyway, thank you for being here. And our topic today is relapse, all about relapse. And I got a little reading from Joe's book, Beyond Belief, Agnostic Musings for 12-Step Life, that we can reference. And I also found an article that actually it came from a book that this person wrote, and he kind of breaks down relapse into phases because he says it's not something that happens, at one time. It's a gradual thing, and the recovery process is a gradual thing. And he kind of goes through little, explanations of what the phases of a relapse are, and then when you come out of it. So people are saying hello now. We've got Bobbert, hello, and Walker, hello. Good to see you. And Panamuse, I like that name, Panamuse. Good to see you. Panamuse is I'm at work, but we'll have you in the background. Don't let your boss know. And there is Bree. Bree is riding bikes, wear mask when indoors, and hand wash. Riding bikes is one of those things that will help you stay healthy. And Missy, good to see you again. Good to see you. Oh, that's Michelle. I didn't know that. Missy is Michelle. How about that? Cool. Good to see you, Michelle. So anyway, I guess we should start by reading Joe's reading. And call us too. We've got our toll-free number. It's 844-899-8278. We'll put that up there. And let us know what you think about this subject. Hey, Siv, good to see you. If you've ever had a relapse, what did you learn from it? What was your experience with it? And we'll just kind of make this a discussion. Hi, Amy. Good to see you. Good to see you. So, and here we go. I'm going to start by doing a screen share here real quick so that we can put up Joe's reading. And Joe's reading comes from Smart Recovery. And they have, they talk about relapse kind of similar to what this article that I'm going to kind of reference throughout our talk, how they refer to it as well. But anyway, let me go ahead and do a screen share real quick. Okay. And there we go. So hopefully y'all will see that. And I'll go ahead and read it. And this will just kind of get us started, I guess. So this is from the July 18th reading from Beyond Belief, Agnostic Musings for 12-Step Life. Finally, a daily reflection book for non-believers, free thinkers, and ... Okay. Slips or setbacks are not the result of not working hard enough at recovery. We can see them as bad decisions without persecuting ourselves. It's better to see slips as indicators that adjustments may be needed. If we feel ashamed or humiliated, we compound the problem by hiding the facts from others or staying away from meetings. Also, although it's reasonable to feel proud of our sobriety, it's best not to see the accumulating months or years as a status symbol. Otherwise, it's harder to own up to slipping and starting over. We influence our bottom line adherence with our choices, but there will always be forces and factors we can't prepare for. Some of us will maintain sobriety in one addiction and innocently cross that invisible line with a new obsessive compulsive disorder. Is this the result of not working the program religiously? Maybe we could have done better, but shit happens. So there could be many reasons why we slip. Perhaps we will find ourselves in a new fellowship that deals with our new preoccupations. Maybe we want to try therapy. None of these personal choices signal failure. As we progress, what it means to be clean and sober changes for us. Some of us take a good look at our caffeine intake. I will not. Or smoking, or our rationalizations about cash register honesty, physical fitness, shortcut seeking, or imbalances in our work, health, or home lives. To err is human, is the point that today's quote makes. I forgot to read the quote. I'll go back to it. Recovery is not a competition, it's a journey. And the question being, do I believe that effort, not just results, is what matters? Do I hold pernicious ideas about addiction resulting from a lack of character, or do I see it like any other illness? Am I judgmental about relapse? Which are some really good questions that can help us out here. I'll go back and read the quote that he used here, and it does come from Smart Recovery. And the quote says, accept your backsliding as normal, as something that happens to almost all people who at first improve emotionally and then fall back. See it as part of your human fallibility. Don't make yourself feel ashamed when some of your old symptoms return, and don't think you have to handle them entirely by yourself, and that it is weak for you to seek some additional help. How to deal with backslide from Smart Recovery. So there you go. Some good food to chew on, or thought to chew on, or whatever. So I will stop my screen share now. And there we are back again. And now we've got 18 people in the room. New people have flooded in to listen and watch Mary and I and participate. So good. Mary, would you mind sharing your thoughts on this topic? What do you think?
I like this reading a lot. And the amount of shame and guilt that goes into relapse is, and I've noticed in sponsees that it keeps them from telling the truth, and it just keeps the relapse going longer. And from my personal journey, I have 27 years since a drink. However, 11 years ago, so I was at 16 years, I smoked a joint, with the equivalent of a joint, and I had talked myself into not telling anyone that that's what I was going to do, because I wanted to keep so my sobriety date kept me sober for a very long time. Like, I didn't want to take another white chip. So I can see where sobriety dates can really work in your favor until it doesn't. So the sobriety date for me couldn't be the only thing that was keeping me sober, because one day there was going to be something that came up, and I justified it and then kept it hidden. And then after I did it, it was in California and I was coming back to Georgia, and I didn't want anyone to know, of course, that I had done that. But I took a white chip in California and started over and told people, and they were all California sober kind of people, and were like, well, how many times did you really do it? Like, it doesn't really count. And it really wasn't about the substance. For me, it was about being dishonest, that I was going to not tell anyone. And the dishonesty for me was the relapse, that my pride over my sobriety date was going to keep me from telling the truth to my home group back in Georgia, that I'd been gone from for a year. And so that was what I felt like taking a white chip over again about,
Mm-hmm.
was that my own emotional integrity had gotten very weak, and that I was lying to myself and justifying things. And then I also got to that place because I wasn't going to meetings, and I lived down a dirt road, which was an hour from the nearest town, and I didn't have a local sponsor. And I can see now the red flags, like it was a process that led up to that moment where I
Mm-hmm.
made that decision. And once I made that decision, I didn't want to tell anybody that was my decision, because I was going to do it. And then after I did it, it was not that big a deal. I mean, for me personally,
Right.
the substance use, I was not drawn to it. It wasn't like I couldn't stop doing it. It was just, to me, the whole dishonesty around it, to me, was disgusting for my personal insides. And so I understand it, and I understand how people hide it and why they hide it and how it happens. And I think if the person that relapses can actually see the warning signs and learn a lesson from it, then that's the takeaway. not just what you did, but what did you learn?
Exactly. That's yeah. And as Bobbert points out, I've never liked it when someone is told they are starting over or beginning or a beginner again, especially if they've been sober for a number of years. I like that is so important to remember because there's a lot of shame, obviously, that we're going to bring on ourselves if we do have a relapse. And in AA, it says, yeah, a lot of sponsors say start all over again. It's like and that compounds the shame because it's like you feel like God, I just totally screwed up all this time, the last 7 years or whatever that I've been sober. I must not have learned anything, so I got to start all over. No, you're just continuing to learn. Recovery is a process of change, and it does have some ups and downs. So just because you have a relapse, even if it's a bad relapse, that doesn't negate the time that you were clean and sober and were
No,
learning and
right,
growing at all. And you just build on that from
right.
that
You build on it,
relapse.
but you can't go back to the sobriety you had prior to the relapse. It is a different terrain now. And a lot of people I know that relapse say, I want to get back to where I was when I had 17
Mm.
years, but you really can't go back to where you were
Good
because
point,
we're
Jerry.
not looking that way. We're moving forward.
That's a really good point. That you are really right about that. I've heard that often. That I've been in meetings before where someone does come back from a relapse, and they're constantly thinking back to how it was,
Hmm.
and they want that back. And you're right. You can never go back.
No, you can't
You
because you're
can't.
not the
You got
person
to
that
go
you were.
forward. That's right.
Right.
Learn from it, but move on and think about. You're so right about that. That's a really good point. Rich says, so true. The further I get into sobriety, the more I have difficulty with dishonesty, even with little white lies. I think that's the biggest thing. Whenever I have drunk dreams, and it's been a while since I've had them, but drunk dream being that I have a dream that I've been drinking, and usually for me, it's like I get a DUI or something, but the bad part of it is I drank and I'm ashamed and I'm not telling anybody.
Exactly.
I'm not.
And
I'm keeping it a
it's so much
secret.
energy to keep secrets.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I can see the value in being honest about be what well yeah if you're gonna deal with it you got to be honest about it and if you're
Exactly.
honest with other people then it's easier to be honest with yourself about it as well.
Yes.
But there's no shame. There shouldn't be any shame attached to this. I mean, it's natural to feel it, I suppose, but hopefully not to dwell in that feeling too long because it's really not productive.
No, it's really not productive.
No.
And,
But
and a lot of people in certain recovery communities don't like to talk about relapse, or they don't like to say what this reading says, that relapse is a part of recovery. Just to even
oh,
say that sentence, I think a lot of more fundamental recovery people in the AA sense don't believe that relapse has to be, because whenever I've said it, I've gotten a blowback from saying it in traditional environments that it doesn't have to be. Like, if you even talk about it, then you're giving it permission.
I've heard that too. In fact, I ran across something. Before I do these, I do some nominal Google searching. But anyway, in one of my Google searching, I ran across like an essay someone wrote about, um, and it was the essence what you just said is that that relapse is not part of recovery. In other words, it's saying that you should never have to relapse or whatever. And ideally, that'd be wonderful if you didn't. But unfortunately, I think most do. I mean, it is part of. In fact, if you really think about it, before I ever got into recovery, before I even went to my first AA meeting, all I was doing was relapsing.
Mhm.
And my first attempt to seek help, by going to that first AA meeting was to deal with that relapsing because the way that I drank was that I would, lose control. I would get into trouble. I would feel bad. I'd say, okay, I'm not going to do this again. Right. I'm not going to mess up like this again, only to mess up again. And it was just a pattern all the time, you know? And finally I said, enough is enough. I can't do this on
Mhm.
my own
Mhm.
and got some help. So this article that I ran across, it was published by the Yale Journal of Biology and Medicine, and it was written by Stephen M. Milimus, and he is a physician and who specializes in addiction. But he wrote this article that talks about relapse being not being a gradual process. There are actually stages that we go through, and the earlier that you can recognize some of your thinking or some of the patterns, the earlier you can catch it, the better. And so anyway, I'm just going to read a little bit of what he wrote, and maybe we can use this to help us with our conversation. But he says that there are four main ideas in relapse prevention. First, relapse is a gradual process with distinct stages. And the goal of treatment is to help individuals recognize the early stages in which the chances of success are greatest. Second, recovery is a process of personal growth with its developmental milestones, and each stage of recovery has its own risk of relapse. And then third, the main tools of relapse prevention are cognitive therapy and mind-body relaxation, which change negative thinking and develop healthy coping skills. And then fourth, most relapses can be explained in terms of a few basic rules, and learning about those rules can help people focus on what's important. And then in the article, it goes into some of those, which we can go into, but it makes sense to me that relapse doesn't happen all at once. I have not had a relapse, but I have had a close call, and it definitely started. Looking back, I can see how it happened. Okay, first of all, this is what was going on in my life. I wasn't happy at work. I was having a lot of stress at work. I was a salesperson. I wasn't selling enough, and I was just unhappy, and I was having a lot of conflict with my boss because I wasn't selling, I wasn't producing, right? So I had that going on, and I also had financial stress, because I wasn't selling. My income was totally dependent on selling this stuff, insurance, and so if I wasn't doing that, so I had that going on, and what happened is during my work day, and I was driving my car around, and I would stop at a convenience store sometimes to get a bottle of water or whatever. And I went into one of these convenience stores, and across the counter, I could see this behind this guy, a bottle of apricot brandy. And it was so wild, Mary, because I remembered a time in high school when I was running around with my friends, having a great time in a car, drinking apricot brandy. I never thought of it, but for some reason, seeing that bottle reminded me of what I thought was a happy, fun experience with apricot brandy. And I think with that, not really at the front of my brain, but subconsciously, I was making the connection of, I'm miserable now. That apricot brandy experience was really good. Mm-hmm. Okay. So now I'm thinking about that freaking bottle all the time. And the more I think about it, the more I feel like I shouldn't be thinking about it. And I'm not telling anybody I'm thinking about it.
Exactly. Yes.
So it grows and grows and grows and grows and grows.
Yes. The not telling anybody, I think, is key.
Yeah.
Yes.
So then, what happens is eventually I get to this point. I decide, okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go to that store. I'm going to get that. I'm going to go to a liquor store. I'm going to get a bottle of apricot brandy, and I'm going to take it home, and I'm going to put it in my coat pocket in my closet, so it will be there when I need it.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm beginning to rationalize that.
Yes.
Okay. I think that I'm not going to drink now, but I'm going to be ready. So when I need it, it's there, and I'm going to keep it in the coat pocket in the closet.
Right. Just make it convenient.
I'm not going to put it. I had a roommate at the time. I'm not going to put it in the cabinet where my roommate would see it or anything. So anyway, so this is insane. So and
it's insane, but you don't even realize how insane it is.
I don't. Yeah. So anyway, this is getting really dangerous. So I get to the place where I actually go to the liquor store. I walk into the liquor store, and I swear to God, this is like a movie scene where it's like everything I'm just crazy. Everything's spinning around. I'm panicking, I'm like, oh my fucking God, I'm really, I'm in a bad situation. So anyway, I turn the liquor store got people, and the liquor store must have thought I was insane. I just turn around and I run away. I leave the liquor store. I don't buy the bottle. I go back to my apartment, and I call my then sponsor, and I tell him about what had happened and what had been happening all that time. And he probably told me to pray or something. I don't know what he told me, but it doesn't matter. Just telling him what happened relieved me of that thought. And Mary, the next day I didn't have the thought. I was okay and I moved on. But
Yeah.
that was a close call. It probably lasted for a couple of weeks, I think, that whole thinking process until I
Yes.
finally got to where I couldn't stand it anymore.
Yeah. And a good thing you told someone when you got to that point and you ran out of the store.
Yep.
It could have been a whole nother story.
It looks like John might have read this article. Maybe yes, he did. So John is pointing out some rules of I think it's rules of recovery. Okay. And it says change your life. Change your life. That's easy. Be completely honest.
Mhm.
Ask for help. Practice self-care and don't bend the rules. What you think of that?
Well, I think when you were reading it earlier from that article, the number 3 thing it was about self-care and mind-body connection and cognitive behavioral therapy. And I think for me, that is what contributed to my relapse was that I was so tense and having a stressful time. And
Mm-hmm.
the self-care, I was looking for like a way to relax and be on a different level than I was on. And I think self-care for me is the most important part of my recovery. And that includes meditation, um, paying attention to mind, body, and physical, and mental, and emotional, and keeping all of that going, as well as recovery. Meetings and podcasts and sponsees and all that. Having a sponsor, I'm traditional in that way. But that was a great way to sum it up, John, in those little 5 steps. Yes.
Yeah, it really was.
Mhm.
He also talked about self-care and sometimes in recovery, no matter who I talk to, um, what guest I have, they'll always mention, and it's understandable that as an addict or while we were actively drinking, that there's a certain amount of selfishness
Mhm.
with the addiction. And of course, in AA, they really focus on being self-centered bastards and everything that we are. So, and I know I was this way, that I would feel sometimes that if I did something for me, that I'm being selfish. And there's a real difference between being selfish and being and practicing self-care. And I
Oh,
can't
yeah.
remember exactly what he said, but being selfish is like taking too much. Self-care is just taking the right amount of what you need for yourself to take care of yourself.
Yes. And my level of how I'm breathing and how tense my body is also a reflection of what's going on in my mind. And
Yeah.
those 2 go together. And what I did after that incident I had 11 years ago when I came back to Georgia and I told my home group, I told the people around me what the warning signs were if I was on a slippery slope so that other people were aware of what I would look like if I quit. Like I would say, if you see me not coming to meetings regularly or making excuses, or if I'm particularly um, ill at ease, or if I'm isolating, these are all signs for me, based on what happened to me before. If I'm withholding, then I need you to call me on it so that other people would be aware of because we don't always call ourselves on our shit. And a
Yeah.
lot of times, like you said, you don't even know you're in it when you're in it.
That's right. Those things that you mentioned, he pointed out in this article as well. John says being negative and stressed out leads to hopelessness and misery, so you might as well drink or use some for relief. Being
Right.
negative and stressed out, man, that negative thinking, that is so powerful. Or negative self-talk. And I was engaging in that example that I gave of that 2 weeks when I'm obsessed about the bottle of apricot brandy. There's a lot of negative self-talk that's going on about me.
Mhm.
I'm a failure at work. I can't sell insurance. I hate my job. I hate myself. I hate everything about life. Really totally negative and stressed out about everything. Of course, I'm wanting. And then I'm thinking back when I was 16 years old in 1970 something, driving around with a bottle of apricot brandy, having a great old time.
Right. And you remembered what it was like to have fun, and you wanted to have
Hmm.
fun.
And the
Yes.
dopamine is going around in my
Yeah. And I
brain
think
there.
self care is also about scheduling times for fun
Hmm.
in our lives, because if I'm not sober to have fun in my life, then what's the point? And we kind of lose track of having fun, I
Yeah.
think, and what fun activities are, and they're more than just avoidance of the present moment. It's more than just doom scrolling. I mean, like you got to figure out what's fun for you and plan
Uh-huh.
it and do it.
Now I can tell that you're a person in recovery because you're talking about all the things that this Mr. Expert wrote in his article, and you already know all this stuff. That's because he said that you have to relearn what's fun.
Yeah.
You
Because
really
to
do.
go to the club and blow it out or go to sit around a fire pit and just wake up in the sunrise, and
Hmm.
still in the chair at the fire pit. I mean, to us, blowing it out was going into oblivion. For me, fun was,
Yeah.
and dancing and all that. And so it's very different when you're sober. Things are different. The way we used to blow it out when we were drinking is different than when we're sober.
Hmm.
And I can have just as much fun as I ever had, minus the guilt and shame.
Yeah. Do you know? I don't know what vipassana. I'm probably not pronouncing it right. Is this type of meditation vipassana? Is that where
It's called
you
Vipassana.
vipassana? Do you know what that is?
It's a Buddhist meditation. I correct me if I'm wrong out there, y'all, but it's Buddhist meditation where you basically concentrate on your breath, and it's a silent meditation. And you go on like a 10-day silent retreat, Vipassana retreat, and
Oh,
you sit for long hours, and then you have a counselor at the retreat, and you talk to them about what's coming up for you in silent meditation.
oh, that does
So it's
sound
kind of like
interesting.
checking out of the real world and going to, or at least in my experience, going to a retreat where you can do Vipassana.
Oh, cool. Have you done that before?
I have not,
Oh,
because I'm not the kind of person that can sit
I
still.
don't know
So
if
I'm
I could
very
do that either.
that kind of meditation is, not on my list of
Right.
activities to do. Like, it's not on my bucket list.
Okay.
Yeah,
This
neither
person
is
shared
climbing
from the
Mount Everest. That's not on my bucket list either. So yeah.
yeah. It was someone from the Facebook group shared that that's what they do is they use that to help to connect with their body. And then
Yes.
Rich points out that it's easy for him to confuse self-care with self-indulgence.
Agreed.
Uh,
And a lot of us have guilt around being self-indulgent just from growing up in this
mm,
culture or in your tribe. And
mhm.
self-care can be massage, it can be yoga, it can get a mani-pedi, it can be going to a salon, it can be, uh, it could be having an hour a week to go to a book club. It could be all kinds of things,
Yeah.
self-care. And that's up to us to figure out. Because if I feel like if I'm going to stay sober, I need to know what those things are.
Yeah. Well, this guy, Steve Melamus, he also identified stages of relapse that I thought I might go through. He says that the key to relapse prevention is to understand that relapse happens gradually. It happens gradually. Like, in my example, it definitely was. It begins weeks and sometimes months before an individual picks up a drink or a drug. And he's found it helpful to think in terms of three stages of relapse: emotional, mental, and physical. And he says that emotional relapse is during an emotional relapse, I'm quoting, individuals are not thinking about using. They remember their last relapse and they don't want to repeat it, but their emotions and behaviors are setting them up for relapse down the road
Mhm.
because they're not consciously thinking about using during that stage. And denial is a big part of emotional relapse. And these are the signs that he's identified for emotional relapse: bottling up emotions, isolating, not going to meetings but not sharing, focusing on others or focusing on other people's problems or focusing on how other people affect them, or poor eating and sleeping habits. Those are basically it. And he says the common denominator of emotional relapse is poor self-care, like we've been talking about, in which self-care is broadly defined and to include emotional, psychological, and physical care.
Mhm. Awesome. Perfect. Well said.
Yeah, that makes sense to me that, it would start off, emotionally. And if you do, and bottling up emotions, isolating are probably two keys for you. Are those some of the things that you're telling people to look out for you? Some of the warning signs, I think you said some of
Yes.
that.
Yes. I because I'm my own worst enemy and I can justify anything between my ears. And so I
Hmm.
need my community to call me on things, but I need to tell my community what it looks like if I'm slipping. And I'm the
Yeah.
only one that really knows that. And when I did that, it was probably a long time coming because I was on a year of a job in California, and it was coming to the close of that year. So I thought, "Oh, I will just do this and then I'll go back to my regular life and no one will know."
Hmm.
And it was Yeah, it wasn't worth all that. I don't recommend it, and I learned from it. I learned from it. And so I think, like I said, if we can get the lesson in it, then it wasn't worthless.
Absolutely. That's one good thing I will have to say about what I got out of AA in a sense is that I can take tragedy or I can take, like the lowest part of my life and turn it around to learn something from it, but not just to learn something from it, but to find purpose in it and helping other people from it,
Yes,
you
absolutely.
know?
Yes.
And Joanna points out that drinking's definitely prevented her from doing things in life that she finds fun. And that's interesting. A couple of weeks ago, at our Tuesday meeting, we had our meeting was about having purpose and sobriety. And part of having purpose is having something in your life that you really enjoy, you know, fishing or reading or sewing or whatever, and or at some pastime that we really enjoyed before our drinking started taking things away from us. And one of the things that drinking took away from me were the things that I used to enjoy doing. It started eating up all of my time. So I'm no longer, you know, doing the things that I did find truly fun, You start thinking that, oh, it's fun to go out and drink or whatever.
Yes. So you attach the drinking. And for me, drinking was always about oblivion. It
Mm,
wasn't about trying to stay awake and do stuff. It was about I want to go to oblivion. But also fun for me is about getting in touch with what is fun, but also brings me inner peace and
mm,
it shoots up the chemicals in my brain that create the feeling of fun and good. And I can do that with things that I consider fun, which for me could be artwork or any kind of crafting of any kind or painting or those kind of things work for me because I get into a zone where I lose all track of time and I'm just feeling inner peace. And that's fun. And also, so is exercise because this increases all our
yeah.
chemicals. And we all know that we're at the mercy of the chemicals in our brains. And also, part of recovery is learning what works for us.
Yeah. Having I like having a creative outlet. And the podcast has helped me a lot with that, obviously, or working on a website and things like that. Creative outlets are really important for me because it does help me kind of get into a kind of a peaceful state of mind where I'm just focusing on whatever it is that I'm creating and enjoying that experience. And it's just nice. And it gives me goals and things like that and helps me learn and grow.
And you
So
feel like you did something, you accomplished something.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's where the halt, hungry, angry, lonely, tired comes in because all those things are environments that we need to be aware of.
I think you wrote this article because the guy says that too in this article. He says that one of the best ways to recognize that you're not um, practicing self care is the halt.
Mhm.
Hungry? Am I hungry, angry, lonely, tired? Yep.
Yeah, and we're not really aware of ourselves in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
We're just like on automatic in a lot
Yep.
of ways, and so the only way to turn that shit off was not looking at it, but just drinking, and that turns it
Hmm.
off quick.
Yeah, and that was yeah, my first experience with getting my own. Well, when I was first getting sober, like the first 30, 60 days or whatever, when I still had all my problems that were playing out. That's what that was the hardest thing for me. I wanted to drink because it could shut my mind off. It really was the only way I knew
Mhm.
to not have to have a crazy mind worrying and thinking about
Yes,
shit all the time. I was
absolutely.
terrified about what was gonna happen to me in the future. It was so hard, and I knew I could drink and just drown all that stuff out. Just completely oh, it's so hard. That's the toughest part, of getting sober is you still have to deal with all the stuff that happened from your drinking. It's still playing out the first few months, and maybe
Oh,
even
yeah.
several months of you.
Years or even years.
Yeah,
You're
it's tough,
cleaning
tough,
up crap.
tough.
Yeah.
It's really tough.
And
Okay,
it takes courage to be a sober person
it
in this
does.
world.
It
Yes.
does.
Mhm.
Okay, so the next part of relapse is mental relapse. And he says in mental relapse, there's a war going on inside people's minds. Part of them wants to use, this is what I was doing with that apricot brandy. Part of them wants to use, but part of them doesn't. As individuals go deeper into mental relapse, their cognitive resistance to relapse diminishes and their need for escape increases.
Yes.
There are some signs of mental relapse. One, craving for drugs or alcohol. Two, thinking about people, places, and things associated with past use. That's what I was doing. minimizing consequences of past use or glamorizing past use. Wow.
Mhm.
Bargaining,
Mhm.
lying,
Mhm.
thinking of schemes to better control using,
Mhm.
looking for relapse opportunities, and planning a relapse. Good God, that's where I was.
And planning it. Yeah.
This happened like a long time ago, decades ago, but it's still fresh in my mind, like it could have just happened yesterday.
Yeah, and I think once for me, it was like once I got to the planning, because someone was coming to visit me from out of town, and that was when I was gonna do it, and we were gonna share that activity together.
Uh-huh.
Once I had made the plan, no one was gonna ever talk me out of it, and I tell people that it's kinda like if you know anything about cats, they usually, like, stare at each other and kinda get locked in before they actually have a cat fight, and you
Hmm.
usually hear them going, "Rah, rah," but once for me, with any substance that I'm addicted to, once I get to that level where it's a staring contest, I've fucking already lost because I'm gonna go there if I get to that level. So I tell people to try to just don't get to that level because it's bigger than me. Like
Hmm.
alcohol's bigger than me. If I get to the point where I'm trying to fight with it, it's gonna win. So I
Yeah.
do everything I can to deflect getting to that cat stare moment.
LaDawn came into the room, and I want to point her out because LaDawn, I'm going to embarrass you maybe in front of everybody, put you on the spot, put us all on the spot, but I would love to have her on the podcast sometime. LaDawn LaDawn's interested in podcasting or YouTubing about recovery,
Mhm.
and she's started her own YouTube channel, which you can check out.
Oh,
LaDawn
good.
did it for real, and she's really trying to learn how to do this all. And I just kind of ran into her by accident. We were watching a nerdy thing about how to do streams, live streams or whatever, or something gauging or learning about YouTube channels, some really totally nerdy thing, and ran into her. So yeah, I'd love to have you on, LaDawn, and get to know you better and what you're doing. Because I went to your YouTube channel, I listened to some of your videos, I listened to some of your stuff. So I think it's really cool. I think it's cool. I love to see people doing this. You're awesome, LaDawn. So good. Thank you for being
Good.
here.
Thanks for the new info. I'm gonna look you up, LaDawn.
Yeah. I just love to see people that are excited about doing something like that. She's in recovery and she's excited about this learning about how to communicate it through this way. And the more voices that we have from all kinds of different perspectives, the better. So just really happy that we ran into each other. It was just last week. And it was because I was sick. So I didn't have this live stream to do. So I went to this nerdy thing where LaDawn also oh lordy. It's cool. Okay. So that was the mental relapse thing. Very dangerous. That mental relapse, obviously it precedes physical relapse. I didn't do
Yes.
that physical, but boy, I was there. So, it's good to know about this stuff. I don't know if, when I was really crazy, if I could think about this stuff, but it's good to know about this stuff. And like you said, let your friends know about it so that you say, if you see me doing this crap,
Yeah,
let me know because I might
absolutely.
not be
Yeah.
aware that I'm doing it. Or denying that I'm doing it.
And then it
So
gives my friends permission to call me on it
we will
because
do it, LaDawn.
yeah, good. And, for me, it was always like, "Oh, I'm fine. I got this. I'm fine. I got this," thinking that I got this. And I was really wrong about that.
Yeah.
I really didn't. I wasn't.
Yeah.
I need to constantly be putting more money in my sobriety bank account so that I was just out of funds
Mhm.
at that point. But what I love about this Joe's reading also for today says it's reasonable to feel proud of our sobriety. It's best not to see the accumulating months or years as a status symbol, which happens in, we all know people that say,
Hey, I think I'm guilty of it.
and it's a it's a status symbol because it shows that you went through that many 24 hours without using your substance,
Mm.
and it won't keep you sober.
Mm-mm.
It won't. There in that moment when you're going to make a decision or make a plan, that's not going to be the thing that keeps you sober.
Mhm.
So, and people, we all know in group settings where people think they're, and they're put on a pedestal like they have all this sobriety, but they really don't have any more or less emotional sobriety than somebody who's got 6 months or 2 months, or, you really can't use it as a status symbol. And it's easy to get very prideful about it. And I was prideful about mine to the point I was going to tell a lie so that I could keep my sobriety date as if it was a status symbol. So I'm
Yeah.
wholly understanding what the sentence means.
I totally get it. Sometimes I wonder, um, about this the thing of tracking time. I'll tell you a conversation I had, like, before I was even a year sober, and I was noticing that my home group would have these anniversary meetings, and people would celebrate 1 year, 2 year, whatever, make a big deal out of it. They'd celebrate, and I was just in awe, that 5 years sober, whatever. I was just in awe of these people. But I asked this guy, this elder guy in the room, I said, why don't we, instead of celebrating how long you've not drank, why don't we celebrate when you started into your recovery? So when you started going to AA, and celebrate that time instead of just the time that you weren't drinking. He says, no, bad idea. Bad idea. He struck it down. But but I was thinking about that, at the time. Oh, there's some good comments down here. I need to read these. Joanna says, it can be intimidating when others have 20 to 30 years of sobriety and I only have a few days or months. Oh my God, I know. It really can be. I was just like someone a year or two or three or four, but I couldn't even imagine 20 or 30 years of sobriety. I was talking to a guy yesterday for a podcast I'm going to post on the 27th. He is so interesting, but he, like most of us, started having problems with alcohol as an adolescent, right? And he ended up going to jail for like 20 years. He spent most of
Wow.
his life in jail. Anyway, I was talking to him, and and we were talking about how young people perceive people who are older than them. And you don't even have to be that much older. So like if you're like 19 years old and someone's 40, the 19-year-old is going to say, I don't need this person doesn't understand me. They're old, And it's the same thing kind of like with years of sobriety. Because I remember with me just being sober for a couple of months. And if someone was sober for 20 years, I'm thinking, you don't know. You don't know what I'm dealing with right now. You've been sober for 20 years. I can't even relate to that. But he reminded me, he says, yeah, but even old people were young at one time, and even people that have been sober for 20 or 30 years still remember what it was like. I
Yeah,
certainly do,
I
in
do
those
too.
are those
Yeah.
early days. But Joanna, you're right, it can be intimidating. And she also says 35 years sober appeals to my ego. Same.
Hmm.
Same. But it won't keep me sober. It's just a number. It's what I'm doing for myself and others that's important.
And then also in this reading, that is very true, John. Also in this reading, he says, some of us will maintain sobriety in one addiction and innocently cross that invisible line with a new obsessive compulsive disorder
Yeah.
or whatever else. So I'm always telling people, and this is how I was told, that addiction goes somewhere. So it's best to channel it, and it also can go into other things that need other 12-step groups or other smart recovery groups or other any kind of reach out to other people who have this particular thing group. And it's like, just because I stopped drinking alcohol doesn't mean that that didn't get channeled somewhere else. And I could be crossing the line into unmanageability with a process addiction or retail therapy or whatever it is. We all know what substance abuse disorders are, process addictions. It can be a million different things.
Yep.
Internet addiction, all of those kind of things. I think just because we take a chip or we stop one doesn't mean that we're not forever vigilant on where the addictive part of ourselves goes.
So true. And I have certainly, during my time in sobriety, have had other addictions creep up that I've gotten involved with, and yeah, it's definitely very real. I mean, it's crazy, but the things I can get obsessed with, I mean, almost anything.
Exactly.
If I think about it, I can get obsessed with anything. It could be good or bad, you
Exactly.
know,
Yes. Like if
but
one is good, then 700 is even better.
mhm.
I mean, it's always about more. It's either about more or it's about escaping or avoidance for
Mhm.
me. When it gets unmanageable, it gets unmanageable. And I've had things just as unmanageable as alcohol.
Oh my God. I'll make a confession. I never thought that I would ever have this obsession. This happened to me a few years ago. I was obsessed about shopping, about buying clothes. Oh my God, I could not believe this. And I mean, driving like to the parking lot of Macy's and like feeling like really excited. This is
Yeah.
And then I'm looking at all these different clothes. What's going on with me? I'm not a clothes person. I'm not a fashion horse, but for some reason,
And then it's like the thrill of the hunt,
oh
and
my
then you
God,
buy it, and then you bring it home, and the thrill's gone.
it's a real thing. It's
Yes.
a real
Oh, it's
thing.
a total thing.
So Ladon says, I was just saying to a friend yesterday, I don't compare days or years. I just live for today. And that's so important. I really, really agree with that. And Bree says, got to go. All right, Bree, have fun. Have fun at the meeting. And yeah, Ladon says that she's spent huge amounts of money shopping. My sponsor's getting on me. It does happen for
And
sure.
especially now you can shop online.
Oh my God.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
And you can get really good deals, and I
you
mean, I have
can.
a problem with that. It
Yeah.
I have to really look at what I'm doing
Hmm.
in that, and I've been looking into, I mean, if you have something, there's somebody out there who's had it and learned from it, and you can go get wisdom from them,
Yeah.
whatever it
Yeah.
is. Yeah, I
Yeah.
got a book recently that's called How to Break Up with Your Phone, and it's for people that are addicted to their phone. Like a lot of us are. I know I am. And so I reached out to an author that sort of has a plan.
Oh, that's
I'll let you
interesting.
know how it goes.
Okay. That is interesting. I I've had some really bad times with it, with the phone thing, especially with Facebook and stuff. I've really limited my Facebook activity to just like a few groups, and for this podcast and stuff, I really kind of limited it to that. But occasionally I will post something on my Facebook page, my public page, that's like controversial, but I always delete it like within a few minutes. I
Oh,
don't know. I just
well, I know somebody that had a retail therapy problem. And what she would do is go to TJ Maxx and shop, and look at everything and fill her basket. And then she would leave the basket there and go to her car. She
what
would
is
just, she would do the shopping experience, but not the
but
purchase.
not actually buy anything.
Yeah.
That's almost torture.
But it fulfilled her need for the hunt
Yes.
and the get. And then she actually
Yes.
left it there.
Yes.
And then I also know people that do things like with food, like they'll order a dessert and then have it there, but then pour salt on it so they won't eat it. I mean, there's
Mhm.
all kind of ways around getting through whatever your addiction is, and let's hope we can channel it into a positive way.
Yep. Okay, so oh yeah, I wanted to point this out. When it comes to mental relapse, he wrote that occasional brief thoughts of using are normal in early recovery and are different from a mental relapse. So just having an occasional thought is one thing. That's not necessarily a mental relapse.
Right.
But he says that when people enter a substance abuse program, I often hear them say, didn't we just talk about this? I want to never have to think about using again. Okay, I'm thinking about the past. It can be frightening when they discover that they still have occasional cravings. They feel they are
Right.
doing something wrong and that they've let themselves down and their families down. Oh my God, that's what I was doing too. Just having a thought is not a big deal. And I've had thoughts before too, like, on a hot summer day, you're walking by somebody and they're drinking a cold beer or something that looks so good. The occasional thought that just comes go by. That
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah.
That's not a big deal. That's not anything. And you can deal with it. You can say thought comes and goes. I'm done.
Yeah.
I know that's a bad idea. I don't need that. That guy can do it, but I can't do it.
Right.
So that's fine. So that's something that's important.
I
But
felt after I first got sober, for at least 8 years, I still had drinking thoughts, like I want to drink. And I thought that meant I was doing something wrong, and I felt guilty and ashamed, just like this author said.
mhm,
But when you really think about it, we're wired that way. That's how our brains work. Of course, we're thinking that. It doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. The
right.
proof is in the pudding. The proof is in the pudding. You're
That's
not
right.
going there with it.
Yeah. And the reason, I wasn't telling anybody about my thoughts because I was thinking that I was a failure for even having these thoughts.
Exactly.
Good gosh. And they just build and build and build.
And they build and build and build. And then nobody else is talking about it in your recovery circles.
Right.
And so you automatically imagine nobody else has those thoughts. So if you do, something's wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So I welcome people that relapse, and I
uh-huh.
will be happy to talk to you all day long about it, because it's something that you can't shut yourself down guilty wise or shamefully about.
Yeah. Michelle's had my confession has brought this out. Michelle says that she's had issues with shopping. It can be devastating. I found when I first got sober, I really craved shopping more than alcohol.
Mhm.
Wow.
It just
And
goes
then,
somewhere else.
yep. And John says, I relapsed a lot in my first 10 years of just going to AA meetings. My main problems were resentments and self pity, just loads and just going to loads of meetings. Wow, a lot of good comments here. Um, this person, Ghost Fluff. For me, seeing that dude at 3 p.m. on a Saturday drinking his beer on a date outside a bar makes me fear for his liver more than my own. Interesting. So he sees it and says, that's
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to talk about physical relapse as the last part of this one. So this is interesting in that, and I got this from Smart Recovery too, and I think that this can be complicated to think about it this way, and I don't even know if it's even necessary to think about it this way. The difference between a relapse and a lapse. But anyway, let me read what he says. Physical relapse. Finally, physically relapse is when an individual starts using again. Some researchers divide physical relapse into lapse, which is the initial drink or drug use, and a relapse, a return to uncontrolled using. It says clinical experience has shown that when clients focus too strongly on how much they used during a lapse, they don't fully appreciate the consequences of one drink.
Right.
Once an individual has had one drink or one drug use, it may quickly lead to a relapse of uncontrolled using. But more importantly, it usually will lead to a mental relapse or obsessive or uncontrolled thinking about using, which will eventually lead to a physical relapse. What I found interesting about that is I think that, okay, if I say it was just a lapse, I had one beer or whatever, it's just a lapse, I'm okay, I moved on. I might be diminishing the significance of that, you know? Yes, I could be lucky that it wasn't 12 beers and I got a DUI. But if I just said, just diminished it like that and not really appreciated the full significance of what happened, that's a different story, isn't it? So
Yes.
it's like you don't want to just brush it off, do
No.
you? You
No, I
don't
think
want to
you
beat
have to do
yourself
a
up
full
over it,
no,
though.
I feel like you have to do a full-blown autopsy, full blown
Yeah.
on what led to it and get really clear about it,
Yep.
or
So
it'll just
something.
could happen again.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep. Something happened. You could say that, wow, that was a close call,
Mhm.
but I better look at what happened and learn from it. Excuse me. It's not like my it's not like don't beat yourself up about it.
Right.
Don't like that, but at least learn from it.
Right.
Okay.
It's not
So
gonna be like, "Oh, well, I blew it out last weekend, but I've started over." But it's really I think it's a serious thing that
mhm.
that, requires you to just be honest about what you were doing that led to that and
Yeah.
what you were not doing that led to that. And how do you feel about that? And do you really want to live your life? Like I say, do you really want to live your life like you need 51% of yourself to not want to drink today? But do you really want to live at the 51%? Or, what about the rest up to 100? There's a good life in there. You know,
Yeah.
I don't want to just always be kind of white knuckling.
Right. So some other comments here, some good ones. Fleeting thoughts. My sponsor told me is normal in early sobriety. It helped me. They accept that they will come. Very true. Bobbert. What I usually do in meetings is say my age when I picked up my last and my current age. I think age is more relatable than years sober. Interesting. You mean your actual physical age?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't like people to know how old I am. No, it's actually okay. You can't, you know what? You're going to get old. You just got to have to embrace it.
You're lucky if you get old.
That's true. That's true. You are. I mean, I could not have.
Yeah.
Um, Unbidden thoughts of drinking are not relapse. That is proof to me that I am still an alcoholic. Time
Time
for
for action.
action.
That's the point, time for action. But just don't
Hmm.
keep going in that endless tape loop about it. That's when it's time to change course.
Yeah.
Mhm.
LaDon's tried Smart Recovery. But there aren't many meetings in their area. There aren't a lot of physical meetings of Smart Recovery. Um, they have made inroads into like VA centers and like in Kansas City, although there is another physical meeting here, but there aren't that many of them. But they do have a lot of them online, and I've been to some of them online, and I do like it. I like to dip my foot in a little bit of everything, but there's definitely some really good information in Smart Recovery. And it's been a while since I've been to one of their meetings, but I do go to the online meetings, and one of these days I'll go to a face-to-face meeting. But there's some good stuff there. I've learned a lot from it. And people tend to cling back to that. I was fine with 12 beers a day So 25 should be fine now.
No, at 25.
Oh, at 25
Yeah.
should be fine. Oh, I was fine with 12 beers a day at 25. So it should be fine. Oh, I hear what you're saying. When I was 25 years old, I could do this. And so now I should be able to do it just as well. Yeah, I don't think it works that way with alcohol. It actually gets like to where like less and less and less, and I don't know. It's
Yeah. I think it's just important to maintain awareness so that we're not out of control in any area of our lives as far as addictions go, or avoidance or escape mechanisms.
Yeah.
Because they can just get totally out of control and, like I said, be just as hard as alcohol, addiction was for me.
So what's your bottom line thought that you want to leave people with on this subject, Mary?
That relapse is a part of recovery and it's okay. It's not, doesn't mean it gives you a free pass. It just means if you are or have relapsed and you're ashamed, just talk to somebody. Just, don't keep it a secret. Reach out and tell someone, and that will release the burden and the weight of it all. To just say the truth out in the air takes the weight of it away.
Some nice finishing comments here. Amy definitely struggled with swapping one addiction for another, spinning or her phone.
Yep.
So, and Dawn's pointing out that the online meetings, but schedule doesn't work for her. So anyway, she's a busy person. So this has really been a great conversation. I've enjoyed this. It's nice that, we can talk about something so serious like this and still have a sense of humor about it.
Yeah.
And we can because, we've gotten out of this, we're in recovery today, we are. And it's just, we're fortunate. We're so fortunate.
And I think honesty, we've learned a few things.
Yeah.
And honesty is really a place to start.
Yeah.
Because we can lie to ourselves so easily.
Yeah.
And so, just start. If you're in relapse and you're listening to this, just start over.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't just say, fuck it, I've already done this, I might as well go full blown. That's too easy. Yep.
Nope. And I will close with an announcement. So, and you guys probably already know this, maybe you do, but you can go to the Secular AA website. By the way, they do now have, or will soon have, a new web person.
Oh, yay.
Mm-hmm. It's a friend of Joe's from Toronto, I think, and she's good with websites. So they're going to be redesigning that. But they're not going to have an in-person conference, but they are going to have an online conference that's going to be October 29th to October 30th of 2022. And they've already updated the website to show that information on there. And they say that there's more information will come out about this conference as the time approaches.
I'll be there.
Yeah, I'll be there too. So anyway, sense of humor is so important. The people laughing at that first meeting I went to is what gave me the hope that my life could get better. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mary. It's good to see you again. I enjoyed the conversation and everything that you had to say on this topic. And thank you, people, for commenting. That just really makes this so special to have 20 people in the room. And I always count. I always watch you when you come and you go. And I always like to see it when you stay around.
And for Missy, it's called secularaa.org.
Yes. I'm sorry. Thank you. The website is secularaa.org. And you will find it. So let's go ahead and play that disco music here. Oh, yes. It's the weekend. So thanks, y'all. We'll be back again real soon. We'll be back again actually next week for another live stream. Got some good podcast episodes coming up as well. Y'all take care. Be well. Talk again real soon. Bye-bye.